Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are putting on our mental helmets because we are strapping in for what promises to be one of the most intellectually and physically demanding explorations we've ever taken.
That's a good way to put it.
We're conducting a deep dive into the bedrock of non-negotiable inner strength, and we're drawing from an extensive and frankly profoundly unsettling conversation with the man who really embodies maximum willpower. David Goggins.
That's right. And our mission today is explicitly not to simply, stand in awe of Goggins' incredible feats. We've all seen the videos, the running, the pull-ups.
Right, the highlight reels.
Exactly. Our goal is surgical. We need to extract the core operating system, the day-to-day algorithm that he uses to program his mind.
I like that word, algorithm.
Because that's what it is, a
Yep.
repeatable process. We're trying to move beyond the motivational yelling and the superficial inspirational quotes to uncover the surprising neuroscientific validation and the practical mechanisms behind his extreme discipline.
And we need this clarification, I think, because understanding how he maintains that peak performance, well, it requires understanding why he insists that true, lasting growth is completely synonymous with feeling raw, persistent, internal friction.
Before we even get into the algorithm itself, the context is it's vital. If you only see the current version of the man, you might assume this intensity is just innate or, genetic.
Sure, that he was just born this way.
Right. But David Goggins is famous as a retired Navy SEAL, a decorated veteran who served in both Iraq and Afghanistan. He also completed Army Ranger School, which is just a brutal, nearly unparalleled military qualification.
And that's just the tip of the iceberg of his formal training, isn't it? I mean, he is also an unbelievably accomplished ultramarathon runner. He competes in and often wins races that stretch far beyond the 200-mile mark.
Yeah, and just to put that into perspective for you listening, we are not talking about a marathon. We are talking about a physical endurance that tests the absolute limits of human physiology and, frankly, sanity.
No question.
These achievements, among others, earned him an induction into the International Sports Hall of Fame. And yes, for a time, he held the Guinness World Record for the most pull-ups completed in 24 hours.
Something like 4,000, right?
An absurd number. And he's also a highly successful best-selling author of Can't Hurt Me and Never Finished. The accolades just pile up and up.
And this is the really critical context. The foundational struggle that created this entire machine is often overlooked by people who just focus on the finish line.
It absolutely is.
His early life was defined by abuse, instability, and a really profound academic struggle. He arrived in his early 20s as a version of himself he just despised.
A version he talks about constantly.
Yes. He was obese, weighing over 300 pounds, and stuck in a dead-end job he hated for minimal pay. A pest control exterminator, I believe.
That's right. And the change wasn't triggered by, a new pair of running shoes or some self-help guru. It began with an agonizing, years-long inner dialogue.
A battle, really.
A total internal war. He had to face the demons of his abusive childhood and the crushing reality of his young adult state. He wasn't transforming to something new. He was desperately fighting out of something old. That transformation, which started in absolute darkness. That's the subject of this deep dive.
So we are going under the hood to explore that intense, continuous, daily inner dialogue. We're going to look at the necessity of what sometimes appears to be a psychotic level of self-discipline and the actual biological structures in the brain that respond to this specific type of pain.
Our goal is to extract the functional knowledge. We want you to understand why his entire life is built on this one premise. If you don't feel the burn of resistance, you are not growing.
All right, so let's start at the beginning. The origin of this conquering mindset.
To really appreciate the ferocity of Goggins' methods, we had to start with his own assessment of his starting line. He is absolutely insistent, and he will not budge on this, that he possesses no natural talent whatsoever.
None. Intellectually or athletically.
Zero. In fact, he describes himself as being born with ADHD, a neurological state that, profoundly challenges sustained focus. He just refers to himself as the bottom of the barrel.
That's a staggering claim, especially for someone who achieved SEAL status. That requires phenomenal memory and focus under extreme duress.
It is. But it provides the necessary context for his unique methodology. He recounts being told very early on in life, as early as 3rd grade, that he would probably never learn effectively, that he might even be moved to a special education track.
Wow.
And what's critical here is his choice in response to this. He refused medication. He made the conscious and I'm sure incredibly difficult decision to force himself to learn how to focus.
So this wasn't just willpower applied to running. This was willpower applied to the most fundamental aspects of just thinking.
Exactly, of cognition itself. He views this self-imposed training as requiring everything he has every single minute of every single day.
And we can see how his past self, his younger self, resisted this. When he was 300 pounds at 24, he describes choosing the easy path, the path of avoidance.
The path of least resistance.
Totally. He leaned into being a character, a clown, because that provided an immediate external reward. You get laughter, you get friendship, acceptance. But it masked the immense difficulty of confronting his actual deficiencies.
Which were what, specifically?
Particularly learning to read, write, and memorize complex information. He talks about how hard it was to even pass the ASVAB test for the military. He had to basically teach himself how to learn from scratch.
So this persona, the fun-loving character, was just a massive shield. It allowed him to bypass the pain of feeling inferior or stupid. But that avoidance, he realized, came at a catastrophic cost.
Oh, so.
The performance required to maintain the clown persona eventually became its own source of misery. It's exhausting to pretend to be someone you're not, especially when, deep down you're capable of more but are too afraid to try.
And that misery, that became the catalyst. He realized this easy, dishonest existence was actively haunting him. It created a level of shame that eventually triggered what he calls just this much pride, that tiny, agonizing spark that forced him to confront the need to extract a completely different self.
It's amazing to think about the scale of that challenge. For him, the journey just to become a quote-unquote human being who could read a book without stuttering or earn $1,000 a month, that seemed completely insurmountable when he was 16 or 17.
So the motivation wasn't some lofty ambition like, I want to be a hero.
No, not at all. It was sheer desperation fueled by shame. He couldn't stand the man he saw in the mirror anymore.
And this desperation, it's solidified into his core, non-negotiable philosophy, which is really the foundation of the whole algorithm. The struggle is the way.
He is brutally honest about it. He's at everything he does in life, every run, every study session, every decision, it sucks. He doesn't sugarcoat it at all.
But the crucial part is he transformed that feeling of suck into a way of living. His life isn't characterized by fleeting moments of motivation. It's a continuous, relentless discipline and regimen.
So let's probe this idea of sacrifice, because it's not just sacrificing a bit of comfort. It's a statement of total divestment from ease.
Right. He says he was willing to give up everything, fame, ease, even maximizing his financial return, to find every single ounce of who he is as a human being. The goal was to leave nothing in the tank, no untapped potential left undiscovered.
And this total commitment, it leads to his frustration with how people see him from the outside. He gets deeply annoyed by people who look at his intense life and immediately label him miserable or psychotic.
Because they're missing the point.
Completely. He argues they fail to grasp the fundamental principle. They just don't understand what it requires internally to extract greatness from nothing. They are judging the appearance of the work without comprehending the necessity of the struggle.
It's a compelling point, and one you really need to absorb. He is not claiming his life looks fun or easy. He's the first to confirm it looks horrible. But the judgment he sees comes from those who are always seeking a shortcut, a magic pill, or a motivational quote, rather than facing the bitter, ugly reality of sustained, painful effort.
He lives in that bitter reality intentionally.
And the most tangible expression of this philosophy is the concept of friction. For Goggins, friction isn't limited to an hour at the gym or a big race.
No, it starts the second he wakes up.
He describes having friction from the moment his eyelids open. This isn't, stretching in a mindful moment with a cup of coffee. Sometimes he hasn't even slept because his brain is actively running simulations about his studies, forcing him to get up at 2 a.m., terrified of the possibility of regression or losing information.
And just think about that for a second. The idea that he, a multimillionaire ultra-athlete, is waking up in the dead of night worried about forgetting a flashcard.
It demonstrates the fragile, perishable nature of this entire system he's built. It's a constant active vigilance against the return of that lazy 300-pound self.
Absolutely. The key takeaway from this foundational philosophy is Goggins' essential phrase, and you have to get this. Friction is growth.
It's not a cute bumper sticker.
No, it is the literal psychological and neurological engine he relies on. He actively seeks out resistance because he learned through decades of painful experience that the only time he truly changed was when he felt that unbearable urge to quit and push past it.
We've established that he lives for friction. So now let's analyze how this mindset translates into his daily algorithm for maintaining discipline, especially with his current intellectual goals.
Right. He's 49, financially secure, a famous author. He doesn't need to do any of this, yet he still dedicates himself to these intense intellectual challenges, like studying paramedicine and human physiology.
And he's not doing it for a career change, right?
Not at all. He's doing it because he needs the discipline. He needs the friction, and his method is almost tailor-made to be the antithesis of all the modern study hacks and life hacks you see online.
Tell me about it.
Given his confessed lifelong difficulty with retaining information, he knows he can't use those efficient learning techniques. They just don't work for his brain.
So this is where the sheer brutal repetition comes in.
Exactly. He studies for 4+ hours every single day, not by reading passively or watching videos, but by writing everything down over and over and over again.
Literally by hand.
By hand. He understands that for his specific neurological makeup, sheer, tedious physical effort is the only mechanism that will cement information into a photographic memory. He's carving it into his brain through physical action.
And we have to emphasize the granularity of this detail work. It's not just, summarizing a chapter.
Oh no, it's incredibly detailed. If he's studying a specific medication, for example, he compartmentalizes the learning into 3 painful stages. First, he learns how to pronounce the complex, often Latin-based name until it's perfect.
Okay.
Second, he memorizes the precise dose, down to the milligram. Third, he learns the specific function and contraindications. This compartmentalized, high-effort, repetitive process is the only way he trusts his retention.
What's fascinating to me is how he translates that physical action into mental recall. When he takes high-stakes tests like the national paramedic exams.
He's not just relying on abstract knowledge.
No, he describes literally flipping through pages in his head. He's recalling the handwritten notes, visualizing how the information was physically laid out on a specific page. The pain of writing it down is what cemented the visual image.
It's a perfect testament to the power of embodied cognition, where the physical effort directly informs the mental recall. It's an incredibly exhausting way to live, applying that microscopic attention to detail across every single facet of his life.
And critically, he has to separate this intellectual suffering from his physical suffering.
That's a key point. He explains that when he's running, he must maintain total segmentation. He cannot recall the study material. He has to be entirely focused on the physical task at hand.
It's like 2 separate worlds of suffering.
Completely. The high-level focus demanded by his physical activity is a separate, demanding world from the intellectual high-level focus demanded by his paramedicine work. There is no cognitive cross-pollination. They are 2 different dungeons.
And his physical activity, it's often more about mastery under duress than it is about peak performance in a perfectly healthy body. He frequently runs with what he bluntly calls a broken body.
He's had multiple knee surgeries, and years of extreme physical stress have left him, in his own words, with a twisted body that he is only now slowly untwisting through constant painful attention.
The first 20 minutes of his runs, he says, often involve limping. His focus during that initial discomfort isn't about setting a pace or feeling good.
No, it's entirely on optimizing performance. It's a constant question. How to get the best out of a broken body. It's an act of engineering resilience in real time.
This is where the 2 domains, the physical and the intellectual, they meet in philosophy, don't they? He is applying the same level of granular, demanding, and frankly miserable attention he uses to memorize a drug dosage to the movement of a knee that wants to fail.
He is optimizing the suck in both domains.
And if we loop this all the way back to his origin story, this whole algorithm is a defensive structure against that past self.
The one he's terrified of becoming again.
The choice he made at 24 wasn't between 2 good options. It was between the easy, temporary path of being a character or the hard, miserable, but ultimately necessary path of becoming the kind of man he could actually respect.
That realization that his comfortable existence as a clown was haunting him, that was the engine. It gave him that just this much pride he needed to begin. But here is the central and kind of terrifying insight for you listening. Improvement is not permanent.
He views discipline not as a destination you arrive at, but as an active daily choice. Because, and this is a quote, "Once it turns off, I go right back to the David Goggins that is."
And that David Goggins, that is. That's the obese, lazy, uneducated, and insecure man he is constantly fighting every single day of his life.
It's a constant battle with a literal shadow self. The existence of the self he despises is his continuous internal stick.
It's why he must remain disciplined, why he sometimes appears antagonistic or even crazy, because the moment he yields to comfort, the old self is right there, ready to reclaim him. This is the entire foundation of his need for constant friction.
Okay, so now we move from Goggins' lived experience, this philosophy of friction, to the empirical scientific validation of what he's actually describing.
This is where it gets really interesting.
Goggins has, completely unknowingly, been training a very specific biological structure in his brain. Let's introduce the neuroscience perspective that explains his insistence on adversity, the anterior midcingulate cortex, or the AMCC.
The AMCC. It's a small but incredibly powerful structure deep in the brain, located within what's called the cingulate gyrus. Neuroscientists increasingly regard it as the critical seat of determination, resilience, and true willpower.
The will to live, some call it.
Some researchers literally call it the will to live. It's the structure that overrides the basic instinctive urge to stop, to rest, or to quit when a task becomes too demanding.
And here's the core function, the verb that defines its growth, which validates Goggins's entire life philosophy.
The AMCC only gets bigger and stronger when a person intentionally performs a task they don't want to do. It is fundamentally a structure built on aversion and resistance.
So, wait, let's be really precise about this. It's not about just adding more work.
No, it is not about increasing the sheer volume of work. It's about increasing the amount of genuine internal friction or aversion.
Give me an example.
Okay, if you love running and you double your mileage, that may be physically hard, but it's still fundamentally enjoyable for you. The growth to your AMCC is minimal. But if you force yourself to study a tedious, complex subject that triggers your deepest feelings of inadequacy, that is the kind of resistance that stimulates this area. The brain sees that you're overriding a strong desire to stop, and it reinforces the structure responsible for that override.
So there's actual physical evidence for this, like you can see it in a brain scan.
Absolutely. The evidence is pretty robust, actually. They've done studies, and they've shown a clear correlation between the size and activity of the AMCC and life outcomes.
I know.
Well, a great example is with individuals struggling with chronic obesity. They've found that the AMCC is measurably smaller in that population, which, well, it suggests a reduced capacity to fight those impulses.
To say no to the donut.
To say no to the donut. Exactly. But here's the amazing part. When those same individuals successfully adhere to a difficult diet,
Something they don't want to do.
right, high internal friction, their AMCC physically grows. You can measure the change in the neural density. It gets bigger.
Wow. And what about on the other end of the spectrum?
Conversely, we see it measurably larger and more active in high-performance athletes who constantly push beyond their perceived limits, and more generally in individuals who have successfully navigated and overcome profound life challenges.
So it's a marker for resilience.
A biological marker for resilience. And even more, in demographic studies of centenarians, people who live to be over 100, this area retains its size and density, which suggests that constant mental activity and upkeep are intrinsically tied to overall resilience and longevity.
So let's absorb the Goggins-esque implications of this finding because it fundamentally contradicts the modern obsession with optimizing for comfort, finding your flow state.
It's the opposite of flow state.
Take the classic example of the ice bath. If you force yourself into the freezing water and you start to enjoy the feeling of accomplishment or the physical benefits, you start to like it. And you increase your time from 5 to 10 minutes.
Your AMCC is likely not growing much at that point. The task has become rewarding. You've adapted.
Right.
But if you genuinely hate the cold, if every fiber of your being is screaming at you to get out, and you force yourself to stay in for 5 agonizing minutes, that feeling of aversion, that confrontation with a negative impulse, is the biological stimulus required for the AMCC to grow.
The structure grows by wrestling with the impulse to quit.
Precisely. And this leads us to the second critical scientific concept here, the perishable nature of willpower. The AMCC is subject to high neuroplasticity, but it goes in both directions.
It can grow, but it can also shrink.
It can grow quickly when constantly challenged, but it can also shrink quickly. It can atrophy if you stop investing in hard, unpleasant tasks.
This is why Goggins describes his discipline as needing constant upkeep. This is why he's so afraid of reverting to his past self.
It's a biological reality. If you allow too much comfort, too many optimized hacks, and too much ease, your biological foundation for determination begins to literally diminish. It is a use it or lose it structure. This is the scientific reason he can never rest on his laurels.
Now, let's tie this back to the reward system, because everyone is hardwired to seek dopamine. The AMCC has strong established connections to the brain's dopamine reward pathway.
Right. And most people get that dopamine from immediate hedonic pleasure. The sugar rush, the social media notification, external validation.
The easy stuff.
The easy stuff. Goggins' process utilizes a deeper, less understood connection. While pleasure is the most common dopamine trigger, intense focus, confrontation, and even pain also release dopamine.
But that's not the same feeling, right? It's not a feel-good rush.
No, it's not the same feel-good rush you get from chocolate. It's a learned, adaptive response, often tied to what's called stress-induced analgesia, or the delayed reward of conquering profound aversion. Your brain rewards you for overcoming, not just for indulging.
So what Goggins has spent decades doing is conditioning his AMCC to act as the switch for this response.
Yes. His brain has been taught to seek the reward not just when the task is finished, but from the actual unpleasant process of fighting the impulse to quit. He finds the biological reward in the struggle, in the friction, in the suck. He has conditioned his internal landscape to validate effort, not just outcome.
So when we summarize the Goggins algorithm from a neurobiological perspective, we realize that his intense terms, the haunt, the stick, and the suck, they aren't just motivational hyperbole.
Not at all. They are the literal levers and gears required to stimulate and build the biological foundation of determination, the AMCC. He is a living, breathing testament to the power of targeted neuroplasticity, achieved through the intentional pursuit of aversion.
So if the AMCC requires this constant abrasive friction, then achieving traditional mainstream success, fame, wealth, comfort, that becomes the single biggest threat to his entire algorithm.
It's the ultimate enemy. And Goggins lives in this profound anti-motivational reality where he actively rejects any hack or magic pill that promises ease because he views them as tools for atrophy.
And he's blunt about seeing this in other people.
Very blunt. He describes speaking at conventions and seeing the same faces return year after year. They're paying thousands of dollars thinking they're going to learn some new, different technique.
And his assessment is?
Harsh. His assessment is that they are lazy. He says they know exactly what to do, but they are just unwilling to do the work that inherently sucks.
Okay, let me pause there, because we need to inject some perspective for you listening. Isn't there a distinction between being lazy and being genuinely overwhelmed, or maybe lacking the foundational psychological tools Goggins built through his own trauma?
That's an essential distinction to make. And from his perspective, in his own narrative, he kind of removes the possibility of being overwhelmed.
How so?
He argues that even when he was 300 pounds, uneducated, working as a pest control specialist, he knew what the work was. The work was reading, writing, and running. He just didn't want to do it because it felt miserable and it triggered his shame.
So for him, laziness is the choice to avoid the known painful path.
Exactly. His philosophy allows for no gray area. You either choose the difficult path or you choose the easy path. And he defines that easy path as laziness. Which brings us back to his reward structure.
Right. His life is defined by the absence of the carrot.
Exactly. Goggins confirms his life is all stick. He doesn't allow long periods of hedonic reward. The only carrot he permits himself is a brief internal moment of confirmation where he allows himself to say, "Mother Farah, you did it again today."
But that's it.
That's it. And even that validation is fleeting. The stick returns immediately. He describes waking up in the middle of the night, convinced he is already losing his memory, forcing himself back to his books. There is no sustained period of rest or congratulation.
This intense anti-comfort stance forced him to adopt a radical strategy he calls capped success to preserve his biological willpower. He chooses to work as a smoke jumper.
Parachuting into remote areas to fight wildfires for 3 to 5 months every single year.
And this choice is a massive, intentional sacrifice. He is walking away from millions of dollars in speaking engagements and commercial opportunities.
He could easily live the life of a motivational speaker, flying first class, running optimized 3-mile loops on a treadmill. He refuses. The question is, why?
Because the minute he becomes a speaking monkey, as he calls it, and relies on external praise or comfortable routine, he believes he ruins the perishable skill of his willpower.
The AMCC atrophies.
He needs to put himself back through ground zero, where he is just David Goggins digging fire lines with a Pulaski tool, depending on basic physical labor and immediate risk assessment.
And smoke jumping provides the specific cognitive demands that counteract celebrity life. In the celebrity world, you're praised for just existing. The effort is minimal, the reward is maximum.
Whereas in smoke jumping,
The cognitive stakes are immediate. Immediate risk assessment, absolute physical dependence on your team, and zero external praise for simply doing your job. That environment forces him back into a state where his determination is tested in real time by survival, not by applause.
so the fire jumping serves as a constant, forced reset. It ensures he remains humble, uncomfortable, and focused on the basics of survival and hard labor. It guarantees the friction he needs to maintain the AMCC.
You realize it was never about loving running or being a SEAL. Those tasks were simply the ones he hated the most, which made them the most useful tools for building his will. The hate is the utility.
This constant engagement with suffering, it explains why Goggins seems so found. He never expresses that feeling of missing something that often plagues wealthy or highly successful individuals who've achieved everything on the outside.
He has an explanation for that. Goggins argues that most people feel lost because 75% of their potential, their will, and their courage are still chained up inside them.
And according to his philosophy, that potential, that true self, it can only be unlocked through the suck. He stresses that truly hard work is not motivating. It is painful.
He says if a documentary were ever made of his true internal life, people wouldn't see a superhero. They would see a man stuck in a dungeon with the key, who refuses to use it because the only way out is through extreme pain.
True strength, he concludes, is profoundly unfun.
This relentless internal struggle, it requires a specific type of communication with oneself. So we need to focus on the internal mechanism that makes his level of action possible.
His ability to engage in a two-way dialogue, which is fundamentally different from the simple negative inner chatter most people experience.
That's a really important distinction. Most of us experience a one-sided internal monologue. It's dominated by excuses, distractions, or self-doubt. The negative voice just throws out noise and we usually listen.
But Goggins learned to confront those negative voices. You're a nobody, you're fat, you'll never learn, with a highly trained counter voice that he forged in action.
And the counter voice doesn't argue with the doubt on its own terms. It confronts it with tangible proof of past conquest. It reminds him, you know the truth. You know the darkness of the dungeons and the demons that fly, and you won that battle yesterday.
So he's ignoring the doubt by focusing on the massive pile of painful practice he has already put in. The confidence comes from the internal receipts.
Exactly. And this relentless introspection and self-communication, it's only possible because he blocks out so much external noise. He does minimal podcasts, has a strict filter for communication. It gives him access to what some psychologists refer to as the brain's supercomputer, the unconscious mind.
He views himself as an artist constantly painting a masterpiece, which is his own refined psyche, and that requires total, focused, protected time.
What's crucial here, though, is the starting point of this introspection. He didn't teach himself victory first. He had to teach himself how to fail properly.
What does that mean?
Well, when he was a 300-pound kid aiming for the SEALs, he knew statistically and physically failure was absolutely guaranteed. Time after time after time.
The goal was so far away.
So far away that mastering recovery was the necessary first step toward any sustained victory. He taught himself that if you allow yourself to sit in failure, to wallow in the defeat and the shame for too long, you'll never come out.
So mastering the bounce back, the immediate commitment to the next difficult action after a setback, that was the first true step toward becoming the man he is today.
Yes. And this philosophy manifests most powerfully in his spring cleaning metaphor, which is dark, visceral, and incredibly detailed.
The cupboards of the mind.
Exactly. The unconscious mind, that supercomputer, it's not a tidy database. He says it's filled with dusty, dirty, and scary secrets, the broken glass and the deep-seated traumas that put you in your current freaked-up place.
And here is the difference between Goggins and most people who are seeking therapy or self-improvement.
He does not clean these dark cupboards once a year or during a breakdown. He does spring cleaning every flying day.
So he starts his day by going right for the parts of himself. The lack of talent, the stuttering, the past lies, the laziness, the things that are most likely to keep him buried.
And true introspection, for Goggins, requires reliving the pain in exhaustive detail. Surface-level acknowledgement saying, yes, my childhood was abusive, but I'm fine now, is, in his view, a fundamental lie that prevents growth.
He says, and I'm quoting him here, "It ain't as what it is, motherfucker. It's killing you. You have to spit shine that motherfucker."
That means reliving every painful memory, every detail of past shame, and every specific instance of failure. And you have to ask why. Why do that?
Because those memories, when you fully face them, understand them, and conquer them through subsequent action, they become the medicine in his internal cabinet.
They are the undeniable proof of his capacity for change, ready to be called upon for strength when doubt next arrives.
He essentially used his own dysfunction as his field of study. He created a self that is driven by the reality of his conquered darkness. He knows exactly where his own problems lie, which is why external criticism is utterly insignificant to him.
The voices he's already vanquished in his own mental dungeon were far, far worse than anything anyone else could ever say to him.
This brings us to a crucial question for you, the listener. How do you maintain this extreme, high-friction, anti-comfort level of existence while also sustaining normal, healthy human relationships?
It's a huge challenge. Loved ones often seek comfort, ease, and predictability, which creates massive tension with Goggins' personal mission of constant struggle.
How does he handle it?
He addresses this with a strategy of radical, uncompromising honesty and very clear prioritization. He states he is unbalanced toward his family first, but not in the way most people think.
What do you mean?
He gives them everything they need: financial security, love, physical support, and presence during designated times, with the explicit goal that they can then leave me the F alone when he needs to go to work on himself.
So it's almost a contractual relationship. It's based on provision and intense boundary setting.
It is. He knows what is required to maintain the source of his success, which is his willpower, and he aggressively clears the path for that work.
But let's probe the sustainability of that. Is that true love and connection, or is it just hyper-efficient provision?
Goggins would argue that for him it is the highest form of love, because he is providing stability and security rooted in a self that he guarantees will never fail them due to internal collapse.
He provides upfront honesty to potential partners.
He warns them, "I'm not what you want in a man." He tells them he will never compromise David Goggins, the disciplined, struggling machine, because that willpower is the only thing that keeps him successful and able to provide for them.
If that essential willpower structure is ruined by comfort or compromise, the whole edifice collapses.
And they're left with the lazy man he despises. So this is a clear, non-negotiable communication. The willpower is the asset, and the asset must be protected above all else, even if it makes him appear cold or selfish at times.
This uncompromising authenticity is directly linked to his concept of confidence.
The confidence Goggins exudes is not built on external metrics like fame or money. It comes from having conquered the literal demons of his past self and engaging in the most painful, unseen work imaginable.
So when he looks people in the eye, he knows that everything he says is real.
Because he earned it in the internal darkness, not through external approval or some superficial achievement. It is confidence built on concrete internal receipts of work done.
The ultimate truth, then, for him, is that this absolute honesty is profoundly empowering because his truth is real and tangible. The truth, admitting exactly who you are, what you can't do, and where you came from, that's the only functional starting line.
He argues that once a person is finally willing to admit, "I'm not this, I'm not that, I can't do this," their life finally starts.
Yeah.
Because only then can you identify the things that require the most friction, the things you truly despise, and begin using them to build that biological structure of willpower, the AMCC.
Which brings us full circle to you, the listener. Goggins' life is the stark example of what is possible when you commit to that painful, relentless, internal two-way dialogue. You are being tested every single day. And most people fail, not because they are inherently weak, but because they have never learned how to go inward and begin the hard work of cleaning their mental dungeon.
Yeah, it's a tough pill to swallow.
This has been an intensely demanding deep dive, examining the source material on the foundations of absolute willpower. The key actionable insight, now backed by the science of the AMCC, is clear and uncomfortable. Willpower is a perishable skill.
It's not built by seeking comfort or finding hacks.
It must be constantly renewed by seeking out tasks you actively dislike, the stick and the suck. It's an internal dialogue, not an external motivational slogan.
Exactly. Goggins' ultimate verb is the most simple and the most challenging. Do. You, the listener, you know what the difficult work is. You just don't want to do it. The only true hack is constant, difficult action that creates genuine friction.
The goal is to build an internal medicine cabinet.
Yes, filled with the undeniable proof of your conquered struggles, making you confident, self-sufficient, and permanently found.
And as we close, we have to return to the haunting shadow of the past self, which Goggins never allows himself to forget. The 300-pound, insecure, uneducated David Goggins is not a distant memory for him.
He is an opponent Goggins must battle daily.
And if you choose to stop battling your past self, Goggins warns you don't just return to neutral, you regress immediately because the AMCC atrophies. The question for you, the learner who has absorbed this difficult truth, is this. What dark cupboard did you close yesterday? What specific shame or failure are you avoiding right now? And are you willing to open it and